joined at this point in time by the former Minister of the Economy of Ukraine. Thank you so much for speaking to us here and joining us on the broadcast. My first question really to you is if you can give us a sense of what's happening on ground at this point in time. The situation, at least the visuals and pictures we are getting, shows an extremely grim scenario.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can just tell you what it is around me, but I'm not going to show because it might reveal location.
Yes.
So we're basically not in the active military zone, but I was in Kyiv when it all started, and then evacuated group of analysts and people. I'm currently the president of the Kyiv School of Economics, which is a major university or a top university, and we provide a lot of analytics for the government. So we continue to do that. We're operational. We evacuated in some in different locations, but I'm currently standing at a mobilization unit in a local village, and it's just shipping buses of people into military now. So the entire Ukraine is mobilizing. So there are people with Kalashnikovs around, and every male is must register within 24 hours of anywhere where he finds himself. Let's say if he relocates and a refugee has to register, and people are being mobilized and recruited, and we're gonna put millions of people to fight. So Russia cannot win.
Yes, we've been also hearing President Zelensky, in fact, talk about how, Ukraine is managing to put a spoke in Russia's plans at this point in time. Russia, of course, continuing its attack. But across the world, we've seen countries coming in and putting in strong sanctions on Russia in an effort to deter them. But that doesn't seem to have worked at this point in time. And of course, the hope now is that talks would lead to something concrete to come out and actually stop this war.
Okay, so here I think first, sanctions are not going to be the final or the decisive. Sanctions can only be a part of a bigger strategy. They are complementary because, what's happening is going to be determined on the ground, really in fights, not in cabinets and among politicians. That's how it was in the previous episodes. The second one, this is just one episode of many, just a really, really extreme. But Russia annexed Crimea in 2014 and invaded the east of Ukraine in 2014 and 15. But before that, there was Georgia in 2008. There is Azerbaijan and Armenia. There is Moldova. There is Belarus, where essentially Lukashenko, the president of Belarus now, has de facto lost sovereignty because he's saying he's not part of the war, but he's fully, his troops and his bases are operational and provide, and Russians are attacking from his territory. For example, Kyiv is being shelled and bombed from Belarus. So de facto, Belarus is under Russian control in terms of military operations. And then Kazakhstan is the same story. There is a concept of what's called pseudo-sovereignty. Pseudo-sovereignty is when Russia can control foreign policy, military policy, and domestic security policy. The rest is given to the local governments. And I think this is what is happening in many of the countries around Russia, that Russia is trying to impose this pseudo-sovereignty control. And so, if you take from that perspective, of course, talks are great, but fundamentally, people might or might not realize that, but Europe is going to be engaged in one way or another in this war. It's already happening. Then there will be major food supply distortions globally because Ukraine is 11% of export in wheat, of the world export in the last year. Russia is between 16 and 20. So we're talking about 1/3 of the world supply of wheat. That means that's, and most of it is being shipped through Black Sea, and there are military Black Sea. Nothing is being shipped there. Plus, both Russia and Ukraine will have difficulty planting, seeds this spring because that's the time now to plant. And we have been talking to agricultural companies. So going to be major disruptions in food supply chains and food security over the next months, regardless of when it stops. So it's going to be drastic. People just don't understand that it's a global conflict now.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, these sanctions and the way Ukraine is getting impacted, it is going to have a huge economic impact around the world. But of course, from the Ukrainian perspective at this point in time, there is a lot that everybody is really dealing with. If you can sort of give us a sense, for a normal citizen in Ukraine at this point in time who are, people being asked to lift up arms and go and fight the Russians, that spirit is extremely high as well of trying to get the Russians out. Can you give us a sense of how it is on that front?
Yeah, we're gonna get them out, So there's absolutely, we're a different nation. We are, excuse me, we're a separate nation. Even if Russia thinks that we don't have any sovereignty, we're gonna fight, and the spirits are high, and they have a lot. For example, in 2014, after the annexation of Crimea, I helped found a think tank, fact-checking think tank for media, to check what's fake, what's not. And the CEO of this think tank is now defending Kyiv, and he has been engaged at least 5 times over several days, and he has lost multiple friends and people dead, basically. And they're gonna fight. So people are disrupting supply lines. I think Russia underestimated how extensive the campaign will be, and so they are now spread thin, and there's guerrilla warfare in the background of this. But of course, Russia has superiority in air and rockets, and so they're shelling cities and military installations. But they now move towards, kindergartens and universities, and they're actually bombing major cities in Kyiv, like Kyiv, Kharkiv, and others. So it's gonna be, even if talks work, it's gonna go for weeks, if not months. I just talked, for example, as we are at the university, I just talked to the head of business school. She's stuck in an area which is not necessarily controlled by Russians, and she just had to cut off the phone conversation with me because there was a fight, firefight started in their village. So I don't know, it's a mess, and people adjust really, really quickly, and it's a war economy now, and it's gonna go on for months, and but the morale is really, really high.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, even from the reports and the people that we're speaking to, like yourself, that is a very strong feeling that we are getting. The morale is extremely high. But on the front of, just going back to the perspective of the economy right now, since you have been, you have been a minister as far as the economy is concerned, what is it now going to take for Ukraine once, and hopefully this will all be over soon, assuming there's some good resolution comes out of the talks, for Ukraine to actually come out of the devastation and the loss that it has seen both on economic and human cost?
Yeah, so Ukraine, we already yesterday morning, not today, but yesterday morning, there was the loss of civilian lives. Dead people is estimated that official number was announced at 2,000. So I'm just afraid to know what it is today and what it is unofficially. So we're probably going to talk about tens of thousands of people, just civilians left. Economically, we're going to lose the harvest, 1 or 2. We're going to have major supply lines in Europe disrupted because a lot of logistics was going through the ports and through. It will take probably between 1 and 3 years to recover to the previous levels. After the war is over, there will be a major international aid package, but the bigger picture is what to do with Russia.
And how hopeful are you as far as the talks itself are concerned, given that, nothing seems to be deterring Putin at this point in time, including the strict economic sanctions? Clearly, that's not working. What is your own expectation of the talks, and how do you believe that a middle ground can actually be reached?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's hard for me to see the middle ground because, they're taking more and more of our country over decades now. And, it's just gonna, we can freeze it, and then there'll be another conflict even bigger in 5 years from now. So it will be worked out eventually within the next decade on the fields. Or Russia has to economically get really weak. Sanctions will work on this. Probably takes time, and it's going to hurt the entire global economy. I think what the best we can hope for, and we want to hope for, is really ceasefire. Okay, so that people stop, civilians stop dying, military stops dying, people, humans. It's a human life has to be valued everywhere, regardless of the country, regardless of the situation. Humans should be protected, and it's a basic, universal value on planet Earth. So I think what we are hoping for, that there will be ceasefire, and then we will be working through economic and diplomatic ways together with the rest of the world to restore Ukraine and bring Russia back to some normalcy.
Yes, and just taking the point that you mentioned about how sanctions are absolutely not working, President Zelensky did say that, you know, he's looking for more help from the West, but US, for example, has said they're not sending troops on ground because it would be too dangerous to have two nations which have nuclear power to actually get into war with each other. But what more would, you know, President Zelensky be looking for, and in Ukraine, what more help would you ideally be looking for at this point?
All right, so we need financial help, we need humanitarian relief help, meaning food supplies. We also need protective gears. We, of course, need military supplies. We need training. The war is not going to be won or determined by who is a bigger, you know, bully on the block. It's going to be determined by who is better at putting fuel in tanks, you know, or who is better at providing food to refugees, or who is better at securing that a truck with supplies can get from point A to point B. Now, you mentioned that general will not engage the troops. That's their rhetoric, and you know, no one declares wars anymore. Russia didn't declare war. Nowadays, it's all hybrid warfare. Make no mistake, and don't, you know, people should not be delusional. NATO is de facto will be forced to engage.
Yes, absolutely. And one final question, you know, if I can ask you about this, you know, Ukraine's request to be a part of Euro as well as NATO. That is obviously, if you can give us some perspective on that. Yes, please go ahead.
Just to correct, we are not an aggressive nation. We have not, and we are okay with where we are. We just want to be left alone. So we did not request joining NATO. Okay. In fact, NATO was never. But we did request joining EU, and we were given candidacy in 2 days because we're a European nation, and we want to signal that we're different from that dark Russia which it has become.
All right. On that note, I'd like to thank you so much for speaking to us, and I can only say hope for strength and courage for yourself and everyone around you to get through this difficult time. Thank you.